All right. Hey, everybody. Stacey, can you hear me? Stacey? Stacey, I think you're frozen. Oh, okay. I see you again. I think your microphone is muted. Give me 1 second. Can you unmute your microphone? I'm still showing you as muted. Sorry, everyone. Give us 1 second. Oh, now it's off. I can't hear you, though. I still can't hear you. Oh, your microphone is muted again. Oh, there you are. There you
Can
are.
you hear me now? But can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, and you're coming up. Great. Yeah.
Yay. Okay.
Woo! That was scary, everyone. We got started at 6:45 to, work out the technical difficulties because there's always going to be technical difficulties. So I'm glad it's 7:02. Everyone, welcome to the second edition of Girls Night In, presented to you by me, Courtney of Think and Grow Chick, and I have our very, very special guest, Stacey Flowers of StaceyFlowers.com. Yay!
Hi. I'm so excited.
Oh man, so I was so geeked about this, and when I saw how many RSVPs we were getting, I was like, oh, I'm starting to get a little nervous. So to our audience, the question and answers app should be live. I just hit it. So you can post a question during our broadcast. I know many of you did beforehand. We will definitely be answering those. But if you have something to say or you just want to make a comment, let us know that you can see and hear us. That would be great. That would make me feel a lot better. Go ahead and post that in the comments. I think it should show below. So I hope we got people watching. So I got 48, so I think we're good to go. So I'm just going to keep rocking and rolling. I have no idea if anyone can see me. Oh, someone says excited. Yay, they got it. All right, thank you, Brandy. Woo! Woo! Y'all don't understand. Like, this was nick of time getting Stacey on here with our
Like I
technical difficulties.
so
I know. All right, so to get started, Stacey Flowers, why don't you let our audience know who you are,
okay.
what you do, just kind of a general overview, introduction.
Okay. Well, I am a motivational speaker, author, and life coach. As a professional speaker, I talk to corporate, college, community, and church audiences about how they can use happiness as like a transformational tool, either to get their employees to work better together, exceed performance expectations, help college students to understand directionally where they're going. So it kind of just acts as the actual tool that I use to help transformational learning and things like that. As a life coach, I work with women with really big dreams and I help them to break it down into actionable steps so that they can move forward and make progress and kind of live out their vision. So in my one-on-one practice, it's really all about like setting audacious goals and then really putting together a plan that's from anywhere between a year to 3 years. So it's been very exciting. Recently, I kind of got into blogging. I kind of fell into that. That kind of happened. But it's been very exciting to kind of evolve into this person who's a writer and who writes a little bit more regularly. So that's kind of like the newest thing that's been added. But yeah, that's what I do.
That's
Very.
awesome. So how long have you been doing this?
I've been motivational speaking full time or professionally for 2 years.
Okay.
Life coaching was probably something that I added maybe within the last year or so. And I wrote my first book almost 3 years, I think almost 3 years ago. Yeah, almost 3 years ago. So I've been an entrepreneur though for about 5 years. Before I became a professional speaker, I had an HR consulting company. And I ran that and I delivered and designed training programs for Fortune 500 companies. Most of my clients were either in the academic department, or for whatever reason, I dealt with a lot of people in the grocery industry, which I really don't have a lot of background, but I did one project that was really excellent. And so that kind of like snowballed into a few other projects with grocery brands. So it's been kind of interesting getting to know that industry.
That's awesome. So growing up, did you go to school for this? Did you know that you'd be doing this kind of work, or is this just something that you fell into?
Absolutely not. No, not at all. When I was little, I wanted to be an attorney. I was so convicted about the fact that when I grew up, I was going to be an attorney and I was going to eventually become a judge. Like my favorite show was The Practice. Like I was not playing about becoming a lawyer. And even in high school, like I did debate because I was like, this is going to prepare me to become an attorney, you know. But then my senior year in high school, I got pregnant, and when I got pregnant, it kind of changed everything because I really didn't think that I was going to be able to go to college. And then I spoke to my counselor, and she let me know that I could still go to college. So I was like, all right, boom, we're going to do this. But I have a child, so law
Oh,
school.
I think we lost.
Uh, uh-oh.
Stacey.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay, you're back. Great. So you dropped off where you didn't think you were going to be able to go to college, but you went to your.
Right. I went to my guidance counselor, and she just let me know that it was still very much a possibility to be able to go to college. And so then I get in college, and I'm like, yes, I can go to college. I can do this thing. Um, but while I was in college, I was committed to becoming an attorney, but I just didn't think that I would be able to do like a straight shot. So in undergrad, I studied law. I have my bachelor's in paralegal studies. And while I was doing that at the college, which was so awesome, they encouraged us to do internships. So I started doing internships, and I was like, I don't really like this lawyery stuff. Like I was like, I have absolutely no desire to be the attorneys that I was working for. Like their job just seemed kind of really boring and mundane. And I was like, oh, I'm just practicing the wrong type of law. So then I did an internship at another law firm, and it just really wasn't my thing. So by the time I got to my fourth year in undergrad, I was just like, I don't want to be a lawyer anymore. I don't really know what I'm going to do with this. So it took me 5 years to get my bachelor's. So then I finally graduated, and when I graduated, I actually took 6 months before, like after graduation, like no job, like nothing. I just took 6 months off to find myself. um, I took 6 months off, and while I was doing that, I did like a ad hoc job search at the Urban League that we have in our city, and they connected me to an organization that actually the CEO was looking for an assistant. They were just looking for an executive assistant. And he was just like, you have a degree, you have typing skills, this might work. So he partnered us. And when I got into the organization, it was called the Somali Bantu Association of Nebraska. When I got into the organization, what they really needed was an HR person, someone to really manage the human side of their organization. And so I started to do these like HR roles, and I started to fall in love with this idea of human resources being the human side of business, and it's a way for me to connect to the people but still be very much focused on business. So I fell in love with that, and the guy that I was dating at the time, he was like, oh, you should get your degree in this since you're not going to go to law school. And I was like, you can't get a degree in human resources. And he was like, yeah, you can. I was like, oh. So I like Googled it, and when I looked it up online, Loyola University Chicago at the time was like the second school in the nation. And I wanted to move to Chicago anyway. When I was going to go to law school, I was going to go to law school in Chicago. And so I was just like, all right, well, I'm not done learning. Let me go get my master's in human resources. Like completely no idea what that was going to mean, no idea how that was going to translate in the marketplace. I just knew that I wanted to get more education. And I knew that I liked the work that I was doing at the Somali Bantu Association. So then I go to Loyola. I have a blast. It takes me 3 years. I get my master's degree. While I'm working on my master's degree, I realize that I want to be in the training and development area because I really want to help people become the best at their job. But what was happening is I was taking all these training positions, but when I would take the training position, it would require me to get up and be a trainer. So then I kept having to speak anyway. So it was kind of like throughout like all of this like crazy road of getting an education, I was always kind of speaking in the background. And then professionally, just through the internships that I had, I was always being kind of like thrust out to like, well, teach them this, explain this to them. And I was just like, all right, if this is a part of my job duties, I'll do it. So then I did that, but then I kind of started to fall in love with the work and really realizing that like adult learners are really unique learners, and that I could really actually use my words and the way that I put them together to teach, to give people new information that would change the way that they experience their job. So I just started to kind of fall in love with that process, and I really truly loved human resources, and I really thought, I was like, that's it. I'm going to be the director of human resources for training and development in somebody's big, huge company. Like, I was like, this is what I'm going to do. Um, and the only thing that derailed that was I was, it was maybe about 5 years ago. Or maybe 6 years ago now. I was just like, I really want to be a millionaire. And I was like, well, all right, well, we're going to do this. You're going to be a millionaire thing. And I started reading books about what it would take to become a millionaire. And the first book that I read, they were like, if you want to be a millionaire, you either have to own your own company or you have to like control a major resource or something to that effect. And I was like, well, it's easier to own my own company, so I guess I'll just start my own company. And I was like, well, okay. I kind of just, just said it, just like one thing led to the other. So I'm training and I'm doing all this training work. And while I'm doing all this training work, a business opportunity comes up for me to partner with a larger consulting firm. But they were like, the only way that you can really come on board is if you have your own company. And I was like, ding, 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 ding. I want to be a millionaire. I need my own company. I'm still in HR. This is perfect. So then I just connected those dots. I started my HR consulting company. I was loving the work that I was doing. It was really amazing, but again, still being thrust out in front, doing a lot of the speaking, doing a lot of the actual training instead of the writing and paperwork type things. And I had given a speech at an organization that I always gave a speech at, and one time I went and they paid me $500, and I was like, this is interesting, because I really didn't think professional speaking could be a real job. I was like, that's just something that I do. It's not a real thing. So I realized it could be a real job. And then I kind of started digging into it a little bit more. And I was just like, I'm very spiritual. So I was like, you know what, God, if this is a real thing, then I need you to give me a sign that it's a real thing and I can sustain my life off of this. And this is a real profession and I can do this. And I went to a conference. And when I left the conference, like at the conference, he was like, set your fees. What do you want to be paid? And I came up with a number. And I left the conference with a referral. I called the referral. We're on the phone and we're dissecting the contract and me coming in to speak. And then they're like, what are your fees? And I'm like, my fees are $3,500. And they're like, that's perfect. That's what our budget was. I was like, what? What in the world? So like, that was really incredible for me to see that like, I could do this exchange and I would be able to have a viable business doing this. And then I went about the work of just like figuring out like what would I be talking about, like how would I be of service, like how to connect all those pieces, because it's one thing to get that one time, but it's another thing to like repeat that and get that over and over again. So it really was just like a zigzag road of me like following my intuition, definitely saying no to my no's, and then like when yeses came up, just being like, okay, all right, yes, yes, yes. So, does that answer your question?
Yes, it did. What an amazing story. I can't believe you went all the way from lawyer to HR to professional speaker. So that's amazing.
What's
So
incredible? Oh, sorry.
oh no, go ahead.
What I tell people all the time though is that I use elements of both of those degrees in the work that I do now, because every speaking engagement comes with the contract that I obviously can put together myself. My corporate audiences that I speak to, whether they're in conferences or they're in small workshops, I'm always talking to employees. So when I go through the door, like most people think I'm like 22. So when I go through the door, I always like, I get on stage, I tell them a joke about, how my son thinks he's going through puberty, and they're like, what? How do you have a son that old? So I do that so that they can appreciate that I'm older. And then I'll say something to the effect of, when I was studying my master's at Loyola. And then that extends a measure of credibility to me that then enables me as a motivational speaker to impart wisdom and knowledge and information that will help them to be better. So it's like, even though there's not a direct usage of these particular degrees, indirectly they fortify my business. They fortify like everything that I'm doing, every stage that I go on. So it's really kind of beautiful how all of that winds up connecting and working out.
That is great. So I want to take it back a little bit to the student loans, because I know a lot of our viewers are like, what? you had a son early, you had up all these student loans, and then you were still able to create a business and be successful at it. So why don't you talk to us maybe about your family background? Did you have support of your parents, or did you just know that student loans was something that you were going to have to get? And what was it like managing it through your undergrad and then your master's degree, and then still having that debt while seeking to go start your own business?
Right. No, I tell people all the time, my inheritance from my parents was not money in any way, shape, or form. I was actually the first person in my family to graduate from high school. So there were no people who had graduated from high school before me. So then for me to go to college, it just wasn't even ever anything that was really considered. So college was like a completely foreign thing for my entire family. And then also with respect to me having a child, what was common in my family though was having children young. Like most of the women in my family were pregnant by the age of 16. So when I got pregnant, it wasn't that my family was shocked or ashamed. They knew how to support me in that regard. So even though I was 17 when I became a mom, it was so common in my family that it was kind of like, well, she's just doing what we do in our family. So I didn't necessarily have to go through from a family perspective being rejected by my family because of this experience. Now, from friends and school and life and society, I was definitely shamed and it was horrible. It was a horrible experience,
No.
but my family was really able to support me in that regard, like just in terms of me transitioning into being a mother. Um, but also because we had limited education, nobody had considered college. Nobody even thought about college. So there was just no money set aside. And then when I found out I was pregnant in high school, I found out when I was about 3 weeks old, but I was like, I'm 17. So I'm like, oh my God, I'm huge. Everybody's going to find out. So I dropped out of school. And when I
Oh,
dropped out
wow.
of school, I didn't go to school for nearly a semester. So by the time I graduated my senior year, like my GPA was like zero. I mean, it was something, I don't know what it was, but it was really, really low. So I wasn't eligible for any scholarships or anything like that because my graduating GPA was so horrible. But I was fortunate because my guidance counselor, I had been talking to her all throughout high school about going to law school. So she was kind of committed to my journey of me going to college. And she told me about the College of St. Mary, and they have a program where moms can live on campus with their children and they can kind of have the traditional college experience because they give you housing, they give you food, everything is very adequate, and then you're taking classes like right there on campus. So with me taking this opportunity or investing in this opportunity because I didn't have to pay for it, it eliminated two of my biggest concerns, which was food and housing. Like so, at when I started college, I was 18. My son was 3 weeks, but immediately my two major expenses were absorbed inside of my collegiate experience, if that makes sense.
Yes.
So, but I'm also 18 with the child. So when I got ready to go to college, I was independent. So I could take out every loan under my own name. I didn't have to get a cosigner. I didn't have to like talk to my parents. There wasn't a limit on how much I could get. They were just like, "What do you need?" I was like, "Well, let's sign it." you know, um, all I knew was that I wanted to go to college, and that I also knew because my son was only 3 weeks that I couldn't work and go to college. So my initial student loans covered tuition, housing, food, books, and like living expenses, if that makes sense. Like a little bit of like just the extra cushion for me to have something to live on semester to semester. Um, but then, I buckled down. I worked my butt off my freshman year. I got my GPA up. I was on the dean's list, and then I applied for every single scholarship known to man, like on the planet, because I went to a private college, so school was very expensive. And then my total debt from undergrad wound up being about $55,000, which, given that I went to school for 5 years with a child, lived on campus, that is a relative, and it was a private school, that is a relatively small amount of money. So I was like, if I can get out of undergrad with only 50,000, I'm good, like I'm totally okay because I had very satisfying experiences. I had an exceptional education. Like, it was just a beautiful experience for me all around. So it was like for me, that was worth way more than the 55,000 that I invested. It was just out of this world amazing. So then the other half of the whole total 160 that I owe, that other 80ish, comes from me getting my master's degree. So when I was transitioning to getting my master's, even though I had an undergraduate education, I was still dealing with first generation issues. So education didn't necessarily make sense. Like, I didn't necessarily say, I'm getting this degree and this is going to translate to this in the marketplace. I didn't, you know what I mean? There was no connection to that for me necessarily outside of the internship, but I'm so googly eyed. Like, my first internship, I had my own office. I was a paralegal, and the receptionist like called me, and she was just like, Stacey, you have a call on line 1. I was like, for real? Like, you know, I was just like, because, you know, people were not professional in my family, so I didn't know how to be in a professional environment. So I'm absorbing so much new information that even as I'm transitioning to get my master's, I'm not fully understanding the weight of what it means to have a master's, you know, and what that will translate to, again, like in the marketplace. I just know that I adore learning, that this is a really good school, and the further education, the more education I get, the more likely it is that my son is going to get, you know, more education. So there was a little bit of just naivety in my journey where I was just like, education is the key to success. You need to get an education. But then there was also this part of me being like, let me just get in the door, and once I get in the door, I'll figure out a way to pay for it. I'll figure out a way to take care of it. So yeah, no, there was no money set aside. I signed every single promissory note, and I signed every single promissory note with confidence, because for me, I was like, I cannot believe that you guys are going to give me $20,000. I'm 18 years old. Like, it blew me away. And so for me, I was like, if you're going to give me $20,000, it must mean what I'm exchanging for this $20,000 must be worth something. And if I don't get the value of it, it's because I'm not doing something correctly. So I just naturally assumed that throughout my whole entire collegiate career. It's like, you're not going to finance something at $20,000 that's worth $1,000. So either I'm missing information, I'm missing some work ethic, I'm missing an opportunity, I'm missing the key, I'm missing something. And my job, after I exchange my word for that value, is to do whatever I have to do to extract what they're telling me it's worth.
That is such an interesting mindset you have, particularly because I think a lot of people are frustrated with their student loans and their college experience in general, because they're like, this isn't worth what I thought it was. I spent all this money to go to school. Many people feel like, they, or maybe they were, I was promised on campus. These recruiters were telling me that I was going to have a job. I was taking these loans. I was promised that I was going to have the ability to repay them in a job that I like, that fits my major, and then I get out there in the real world and that's not, just dropped off at my doorstep. I don't know what to do. So I think it's really interesting that you call it naivety, but I don't know, maybe you just weren't exposed to people telling you that, like, oh yeah, you're going to be able to pay your student loans off. But for you to take that responsibility on yourself, that's pretty huge. So what would you say to a lot of students or people who have been out of college and they're feeling a little jaded, and they don't feel like you, they don't feel that their college and that their student loans were worth it?
Right. And it's interesting because me and my girlfriends, we talk about this all the time. We literally talk about it all the time, and I get that my perspective is not necessarily common, and I'm coming to it from a different angle. I entered into college with obstacle and hardship, so everything is a blessing to me. Anything that I was able to do with my son on my hip, I'm like, I'm blessed. Like, so I get that my perspective is unique. And to that particular person who feels like there was a promise that they haven't necessarily been able to cash in on, I think that there's a fire truck. I think that it's interesting. I recently went to a conference where a mayor got on stage, and she was talking about how she went to Africa, and when she was in Africa, she watched children walk a, a couple of miles. I don't know, let's say 5. I can't remember the exact number. But she said she watched children walk 5 miles like every morning just so they can go to school. But then here in our country, we won't cross the street just so that we can get an education. And I think that a little, give me just 1 second. I'm going to move out of this area. Just 1 second. I don't know if he's going to stop. I'll be right back to talk to you, okay?
No, you come back.
I will. I'll be right back. We're going to just go over here. Sorry, guys.
Girl, crazy people in the coffee shop.
Um, okay. Okay. So I think what's interesting about that is that there's a couple different things at play. Like one, in 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 America in general, we have this. We are sold a promise from Jump Street. Like the promise is that you get the American dream and you get this and you get like that's kind of like what our culture is built on, is saying that these are the promises and only if you do X, Y, and Z, you then get to inherit the promise. So your first promise wasn't just college. That wasn't the first time somebody told you that you would be able to get something in exchange for X, Y, and Z. So I would encourage the person to, one, acknowledge that, acknowledge the trend in your experience of you believing in a promise that wasn't necessarily honored. The second thing that I would tell you to do is that while it may seem like the promise is void because you're not reaping the benefit, I would ask you to be 1,000% honest with yourself and ask yourself, are you doing everything that you can do? Because, like, one of the friends, we talk about it all the time, she has her bachelor's in international business in Spanish. She is making close to six figures, but she's not working in international business in Spanish. So her upset is that, yes, she's making the money, but she's not in the field that she wants to be in. But I'm like, how much effort did you put into getting into that field? As you know what I mean? Like
Right.
sometimes we're like, I want to be this, and we apply to one or two or three places, but it's like, if this is your gifting, if this is what you believe that you should be doing, you can't apply to one or two or three places because everybody has been sold the same promise. So your competition is greater. Your work is going to have to be greater. If you want to break into that marketplace and get paid at a level that allows you to be able to establish the life that you want, you have to be willing to get a little bit more grit, a little bit more hustle. And I know that that puts a lot of responsibility on you, but if you give the responsibility over to whomever, the schools, the banks, the whatever, you lose all power. It literally, you leak power to whomever you feel is responsible for not enabling you to get to where you want to go. And then I also tell people, there are levels to everything. I'm raising my niece now, and I'm trying to explore what her purpose is and what she wants to do. And what's interesting is, like, a lot of people are like, what if she doesn't want to go to college? Are you going to be upset? I'm like, no, I'm not going to be upset. She can do whatever she wants to do. Like, if she, for example, if she wanted to be a hairstylist, you don't have to go to college to be a hairstylist. She would go to cosmetology school. And I said, but there are levels to people being hairstylists. There are hairstylists who are getting Grammy for the hair that they styled for a movie. And then there are hairstylists who can't make rent. Both of them are talent, but there are levels to how you are using your gift in the marketplace. There are levels to how you are choosing to show up. And here's the thing, the second you realize that it was going to be hard and it wasn't what you thought it was going to be, and the promise felt like it was void, that was the second that you needed to say, okay, since this promise is void in my eyes, I'm going to do something different. I'm going to move in a different direction. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think that's
So
that's great.
I feel like to that person, it's, I want you to exercise your truth and exercise your choice. Never ever forget that you have choice. There are choices inside of your choices, and there are levels to every single thing that you do. And then also, I think we're a little bit impatient. Not everyone, but a few of us are a little bit impatient. I was telling my friend, she was just like, don't you feel like, aren't you just frustrated that more people don't know about you? I'm like, no, the average business doesn't really take off for 5 years. I've only been speaking for 2 years. So, I mean, I got 3 more years. So for me, like, I build in a healthy timeline. And I think a lot of people, they were sold the promise, when you get out of undergrad, you're going to be making $60,000. It's like, if you commit to working in one position and you go through professional development things and you are committed to this particular career, like, okay, in 5 years you might be able to move into that level. But when you start, you will start where everyone else is starting. And that's okay. And we got to get to the point where we're a little bit more okay with that.
I love that. I was kind of explaining the same thing. My sister, she's in school now. She's younger. She's 22, and she was like, "Oh, you got a marketing degree. My friend got a marketing degree, and there's no jobs." They live in Indiana, and she's like, "There's no jobs in Indiana, so can she get a job at your job, or like, what advice do you have for her? And I just was asking basic questions like, well, has she contacted any marketing companies? Oh, well, there's no marketing companies where we are in Indiana. Well, can she go to Chicago? Can she go to Detroit? Can she go to Ohio? Like, is she willing to leave the state of Indiana? Is she willing to maybe just pitch herself to a marketing company versus just putting a resume out on, is she willing to take the initiative to identify a need somewhere and then position herself as, I'm a person that can do this, versus just waiting, oh, I graduated from school, can somebody give this to me? And she was like, no, I don't think she's done anything of that. And I'm like, well, why is she mad that she doesn't have a marketing job,
Right.
If that's something important to you, you have to have, I love how you said you have to have some hustle and some ambition about that. So I want to ask you, I think there are people there who are watching who are like, okay, I can buy into that, I want to hustle more, but they feel defeated because they don't know where to start. Maybe they've, for so long, for 3 years or however long they've been out of school, they haven't taken that initiative, but they want to now, but they don't know what to do, and they feel kind of like, okay, that sounds great, but how do I practically do that? So what kind of advice would you give them?
Well, first thing, a lot of people who are feeling the sense of overwhelm and like not having made it and they're not where they want to be, and this is only just based on my experience with like my coaching clients and then some of the people that I've talked to like in the years of just like the HR consulting, is that a lot of people who are very overwhelmed and feel like they haven't arrived are also people who have a tendency not to finish things that they start. So like, for example, they'll start a master's program, but they didn't finish. They'll start working at a company that they thought was great, but they wouldn't finish. They started kind of tweaking around with the blog, but they didn't finish. So the first thing that I would definitely tell you to do is finish the last thing that you started, whatever it is. Because if I wouldn't have finished the bachelor's degree, I wouldn't have had access to the master's degree, which wouldn't have given me an opportunity to build one successful company before I leaped off into another successful company that's now positioning me to make audacious statements like, I'm going to pay off 160K in 1 year. So I had to finish those things. Like I knew in my 4th year that I did not want to be an attorney, and I could have changed my major. But no, I finished each of my internships. I finished that program because there's still value in it. There's some value in me desiring at a young age to be an attorney. It might not be the exact same picture that I thought it was going to be, but there's still some value in it. So I would just encourage you, the very first thing is finish the last thing that you started, whatever it is, because overwhelm is like confusing. Like overwhelm will have you just being like, I don't have any skills. And it's like, that's not true. You know that's not true, but you're so overwhelmed that you discount the fact that you do have skills and you have been managing this position and you are doing well, and et cetera, et cetera. So just finish the last idea that you had. Just whatever it is, just finish that idea. The next thing is that, like, if you're trying to get started on a track of, like, say you have a degree in something but you're not using that degree, networking is really, really powerful, and I think a lot of people just don't use it. I don't know why people think that networking is using. It's really not. It's really just an exchanging value for value. I guess it's a lot about value. Um, but I would encourage you to start tapping on your network. One of my cyber mentors, like I adore her. Her name is Malik. Like she talks about internships a lot. And I would encourage you, I don't care if you're 22 or 45, if there's a field that you want to break into, that you have the education, but you don't have any experience, consider an internship. Now, an internship does not have to be 40 hours. It could be 5 hours a week, just where you can touch the industry so you can see whether or not this is really something that you want to do, and you can begin to build relationships with other people. They can see your awesome work, and then they can put you on. It's networking is how you kind of get onto the path that you want to be on, and you start to create those dream roles and those dream jobs that you really want to be able to have. I think for the person who just completely feels like, my degree was a waste, I'm not using it, I have absolutely no interest in this field, I don't know what I'm going to do when I get older, or I don't know what I'm going to do tomorrow, like I'm just kind of like lacking purpose and lacking passion. For the person that's lacking purpose and lacking passion, I think that you have to settle yourself by finishing what you started. But also you have to, and I think one of the things I talk about too with happiness is I always tell people happiness is established by truth. You have to be willing to tell yourself the truth. And I believe, this is just my belief, everybody knows what they want to do. It's just scary to tell other people that you want to do that. It's scary to show up and actually do it. So for that person who feels like they're lacking purpose, they're lacking passion, I would encourage you to do some soul searching and just get real honest with yourself and say, look, this is what I really want to do. And I'll give you a good example. My baby sister, she really wants to be a choreographer and open up a dance studio. Well, she became a teen mom, much like I did. She has 4 kids. Her last 2 children are twins. So her life is complicated right now. She did graduate from high school and she did a couple classes in college, but she wasn't able to finish her degree. She really wants to open up a choreography studio. Right now, she's working in telemarketing. She doesn't love her job. She doesn't hate her job. She's just like, I can't believe this is my life. Like, this is boring. And every time I talk to her, I'm like, Brina, you want to open up a studio? And she's like, I know, but I don't know how to do that. I said, the first thing that you need to do is you need to finish that associate's degree so that you can have some confidence about knowing that you will see things through. The next thing that you need to do is maybe you should put your girls in a studio so that you can have a relationship with somebody in a studio. Then also having them in the in a studio will free up some of your time, so then you can be a little bit more creative. Then, and it's like one thing leads to another. So if you're lacking passion, lacking purpose, do some soul searching, sit down. I don't know if there's a way for us to like maybe add links. I can maybe add a couple books that I think are just really thought
Oh,
provoking.
yeah. I have this showcase feature. I'm gonna start it. So go ahead and add links and it'll appear on the side. I don't know
Yeah,
if you can
I'll
see
do
that.
that. It's I get it. I get that it's hard to do a mundane job that you don't feel any meaning in, but I'm the type of person who believes that like every single thing has meaning and most of the meaning comes from what I assign to it. So for me, when I look back on my life, I'm like, oh yeah, that 5-year degree was so that I can write amazing contracts for my speaking company. When I look back and I'm like, all those years I was getting up training and developing, that was so that I could be the type of speaker who could specifically work with adult learners. Like, I give everything the type of meaning that I wanted to be able to have. And it's a switch that you have to make, but I think that it's a switch that's well worth it, and it's a switch that will suit you later on in life so that you can have those things that you want and kind of do more of the things that you want to do.
Right. I 100% agree with that. I just kind of doubled down on that mindset even recently myself. Like, my job is certainly not boring, I enjoy it, but there are times where I'm like, I know what my ultimate destination and ultimate goal is and where I want to be, and it can be very daunting to be like, oh, I'm here, I really want to be blogging and speaking and writing books and doing all this stuff. But I finally came to myself and I'm like, I'm sitting here writing these reports all day, sending these emails all day, and I'm complaining that I don't have time to write. Why don't I focus on the writing that I'm doing here and make sure that my grammar is tight, make sure that, bring the little writing books that I have here at home to help me improve my writing? Why don't I improve the memos that I'm doing? Why don't I improve the reports that I'm doing? I have presentations that I have to do. Why don't I just pretend, essentially that they're Think and Grow Chick presentations and that, I'm practicing for what I ultimately want to do. So I think any position that you're in, whether it's school or just a job that you kind of don't like, can be training. At bare minimum, it could be training for discipline. Because this is the thing that I tell people all the time. They're like, they just want to goof off at work and not do anything. But you can't switch that off. You can't be at your job for 8 hours not doing anything and then think you're on your dream and have all this hustle and ambition. And it's like, no, you work hard at work so that you build that habit and that discipline to have that tenacity when you get home to do that when you're tired or when your kids are screaming at you or when it's midnight and you need to do what you want to do. So I'm like, totally there with you. High five.
Right.
So, so now I want to move into you're paying off $160,000. How in the world are you doing this?
Yes.
And how can other people do it too?
Right. Well, I'm definitely doing it by faith. I do not. I just want to be very clear. I do not have $160,000 stowed away in a 401k, in a savings vehicle, in a investment. No, I do not have any of this money sitting around anywhere. And in February, when I decided to do this, I want to say in my savings account, I want to say maybe I had maybe $10,000, maybe. I'm not like $10,000, but I have that because also I'm an entrepreneur, so there's a little bit of a cushion that I need to have in order for me to like maintain my sanity. So like when people hear $10,000, they're like, oh, she started with $10,000. It's like no, 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 no. I didn't start with $10,000. That money is money that I have to have reserved because of the way that business expenses come up for the type of business that I'm in. So like if I get a speaking engagement, I have to pay for my travel up front and then get reimbursed. I don't come off stage. They don't give me a check when I come off stage. Sometimes my check comes 2 weeks later. Like, so different things like that. So I don't want you to hear that number and say, oh, that's where she started. No, what I started with was my change jar. And I think it was like $22 and some change. And I was just like, I'm just going to cash this in. And this is better than nothing at all. Because last year my loans were in deferment and I didn't pay a dime. And already I've paid $22 and some change. And I gave myself credit for that because last year I did not pay a single penny on any of my student loans because they were in forbearance because my income was limited because I was a new entrepreneur. So I took advantage of that opportunity to go into forbearance and do that. So when I decided in February, it was really because one, I was reevaluating my goals. I was like, look, you want to be a millionaire, but you want to be a millionaire before you pay off your debt. That doesn't really make sense. And what people will learn as they really start to work on like what they really want to do with their life is that when stuff is out of order, you can sense it really quick and you'll have a mind and a heart to correct the stuff that's out of order. So it's like it's out of order for me to be all like, I'm gonna be a millionaire, I'm gonna be a millionaire, but I'm walking around with $160,000 in debt. So I had to correct the order. So then initially I was just like, okay, well, I'm on a 10-year payment plan right now. I think it's standard, or maybe it's 10 years. Is a standard, and I was like, man, 15 years, whew, that's a long time. And then I knew that was a long time, so I was like, okay, maybe I'll do it in 10. But what really was like the final like kick me into gear was I had a 13-year-old niece last year. And I had made a vow to myself when I was in college, when I was 19, my sophomore year, that I was going to put all of my nieces through college because I knew, because I was the only one getting an education, that I would be the only one in a position to pay for them to be able to go. So at the time, I think I had 3 nieces, but I was like, yeah, however many nieces or how many, nieces or nephew I have, I'm going to pay for their college. Well, I have 7. Jesus. I have 7. And when my oldest niece came to live with me, I got a real huge reality check that, like, in 5 years, she's going to college. Stacey, do you really want to be paying off your college debt while you're trying to cash flow her college? Because if you do it that way, every time she does what people normally do in college, you're going to flip out because you're not going to have the room to not be stressed out about how much money you're investing in her college education. And then you're going to be on top of her like white on rice, and she's not going to be able to get what you want her to be able to get out of her college experience. So that was like a reality check. I was like, so technically, I really only have 5 years to get rid of this debt. But then I was like, okay, if I take the whole 5 years to get rid of this debt, then my son and my niece are not really going to be able to enjoy these next 5 years with me because I'm going to be focused on this debt. So then I was just like, all right, well, I'm going to do it in a year. And then I just kind of decided that I was going to do it in a year. And I posted a little thing on Facebook. I was like, Facebook, people used to use it who were in college. So I'm going to go back. It's a true throwback Thursday. I'm going to talk about something about college, and I'm going to pay off my student loan debt in 1 year. And when I said it, all these people were like, oh, how are you going to do it? And I was like, oh, okay. And so then I just kind of gave them another Facebook status update. I was like, I'm going to increase my income and decrease my expenses. And then they were like, well, how are you going to do that? And I was like, okay. So then like they just kept asking more questions, and they were turning into my accountability partner. And then I was like, well, I need this accountability partner, which is part of the reason why I said it on Facebook. But I'm also realizing that people really want this information. So let me get a little bit more detailed. And as I was getting more detailed, like anytime I set a goal, I always make a plan. Like I begin with the end in mind, like the 7 habits of highly effective people. And I was like, my end game at the time, I thought it was 152,000. I said, my end game is to pay off 152,000 in 12 months. How can I do that? So then I came up with like 10 different ways that I would be able to pay that off. So it was like increase your income, get a side hustle, I kind of listed all that out. then I looked at, my life, and I said, what do you have time for? What, and so, I mean, I really went through like this, like, lay it all out, write it all out, like, plan. And after I laid it all out, I said, okay, let's turn this into action. So I was like, I know that this is something, a year is really fast, but this is a very daunting, tedious task, and nobody's really on this path. So I need something to encourage me along the way, but also motivate me. Like, I need a carrot and a stick. So I was like, well, I need a daily trigger. I need something every day to remind me what I'm doing. Because right now, there's something every single day to remind me not to do this. Like, every single day, there's a commercial that's like, this dress is only $9.99 at Old Navy, Like, I need something every day to counter that messaging. So I was like, okay, what can I do every day? I was like, you can make a payment every day. And I was like, all right, how much can I really pay every day? And then I was like, no, don't think about how much you can pay. How much do you want to pay off in a year? And I was like, well, $5,000. I was like, no. And I'm like, okay, $2,000. I said, $2,000 is doable. I know my ultimate goal is the 160K, but $2,000 feels possible. And so this trigger was to make it possible, to make it doable, to make it real, and to make one of my strategies actionable. So I was like, okay, $2,000. Well, what's $2,000 divided by 365? And I think it's like 557 or something like that. So I was like, all right, 550 a day. I'll pay $5.50 a day to be a mental and physical trigger to focus on paying off my student loans. So then I implemented that strategy, and then over time it evolved into it being called the Mr. Miyagi payment, because from the
I
Karate
love
Kid,
that.
where he's like, wax on, wax off. He's learning how to do karate, but he doesn't know it. And it's the same thing with me. I want to learn how to pay off debt, but I don't want to know that I'm doing it. I don't want to cry when I send this payment in. I don't want to, yell at my kids. I don't want to yell at my boyfriend. I don't want to be mad. I just want it to be a wax on, wax off type situation, because the payments are going to get bigger. So then I did that, and I was already kind of working every now and again at a side hustle, because I served. That's how I put myself through college. I was a server. And so I was like, well, I can just start picking up more hours here. I can be a little bit more intentional. What I'll do is I'll turn my serving income into my money that I'm living off of, because it's less than how much I make in my business. And then I'll flip all my business income onto my student loans. I was like, whoa, that's scary. So, like, I literally turned a second job, or a side hustle is what I call it, into my primary income source. And then I allowed the money where it's like flowing to become like big, huge chunks that I get to put onto my student loans. That was one. There was another time where I was actually looking for like consulting contracts, where I was going to pick up some of my old HR consulting clients and just do like a 30-hour project or something like that for them. So I was really seeking out multiple sources. So then once I kind of exhausted what I could do with my mental capabilities, I was like, okay, what can you do with your physical capabilities? You can babysit, you can donate plasma, you can dog walk, you can, so I went from like, first figure out what you can do with your mind, and then figure out what you can do with your body, and then, add all that up together, and that will be at least 10 times more than what you were putting on there last year. And right now, the different things that I do, no, you're fine. The different things that I do are, I have my speaking income, then I have my side hustle income, then I donate plasma twice a week, which when I donate plasma, I'm pretty small, so it's only $15 a donation. And I kid you not, like, I really wanted to stop doing it, but I keep doing it because plasma goes to make this medicine that you have to give to women when they're pregnant. Like, there's this RH negative something. Don't quote me, guys. I'm not a nurse. But there's like this RH negative thing that causes women to kind of reject their babies. And when I was pregnant with my son, I had it. So when I started donating plasma, I kind of really only did it because I was like, oh, this is a way to get extra money. But then when they told me that this plasma made that medicine, I was like, oh my God, I had to do that. This is perfect, So it's kind of also like this way for me to be able to give back to that. But it's $15 a donation twice a week, so $30 a week, $120 a month. All goes on to my student loans. I cash in my change jar every single month. Like, I reduce, like, when I tell you I reduce my expenses, like, a lot. That one was like really, really hard. Like, cutting back on coffee. I love me a hazelnut latte. I can't wait till this challenge is over, just so I can have a hazelnut latte. um, I did a little meal prep where like maybe twice a month, like I'll prepare food, like I'll go in and I'll cook 2 weeks worth of food for people who just don't have time to cook food. And a lot of these physical activities, they're double duty. So anything that I'm doing with my physical body is double duty for enhancing my business or my life. So for example, when I donate plasma, it takes me about an hour and 30 minutes to 2 hours. Well, what I do now is I do that twice a week, but that's also the time for my business where I'm doing professional development. So I'm reading or I'm specifically sourcing a client. Does that make sense? So
Yeah.
I'm earning the money from the plasma, but I'm also still working on my business. So it's not like I do one or the other. It's like, no, I'm hustling 24 hours in a day. Um, so there's that. So there, I mean, there's a lot of different things, but I think the first thing that you have to do is you have to come up with a why, and that why has to be something that's gonna motivate you through the crap that you're gonna go through. And my why is so big, and I feed my why. She wakes up and she argues with me, and she's like, she's just like, oh, Auntie Stacey, I see her all the time. So like my why is like constantly in my face, and seeing her age daily just is like, whatever, Stacey, like I know you're tired, but you got to keep going. So figuring out your why and then making that a decision, and then making a decision every single day to stay committed to it. And every single day I want to give up. Every single day I'm like, this is stupid, nobody else is doing this, it's not going to make a difference. Like, I've been doing this for 6 months and I still owe over 100K. I was so upset about that, but I'm like, Stacey, keep going. Just pay the 550. Just keep going. Just keep going. So
I love that. So just so people are clear, you do 550 every day. That's an extra payment on top of the month.
yes. So I do my minimum payment. So my minimum payment right now is 1610, and I break it into 4 payments a week because I just don't. I mean, some of my speaking engagements I might be able to do it, but again, the way my cash flow works is usually I'm getting my money for the month the following month. So I have to kind of plan a little differently just because it's a business. But I break it into 4 payments, and so I do my minimum payment for the week, and then every day I also do the 550. So yes, it's the minimum payment plus 550 a day, plus the change jar, plus the meal prep, plus the plasma donation. And then I live on my side hustle income. And then I do like food tasting and stuff like that. They'll like send you a little link and you can come in and like taste nasty popcorn and tell them what you think, and then they'll give you like $25. So that probably happens like 4 times a month.
So you do it all. I think, because I do want to move into some of our audience questions, but you answered so many right there. I know we had some questions about how do you stay motivated. You make this big plan, but then how do you stay motivated on like the little day-to-day stuff? But I love that you basically said your why is in front of you constantly. Like that's what keeps you motivated.
And what happens if your why is not in front of you though? Like if your why is not in front of you, I would encourage you to do like how I did with creating the daily trigger. What's something that you do every day? Like, do you brush your teeth every day? Do you like apply your, mascara in a certain way every day? Do you pray at a certain time every day? Like, create a trigger and then build in what you need to do inside of that trigger. So every day at 8 o'clock, I get an alarm to pay this payment. So that's built inside of my morning routine. Because not everybody's why is walking and breathing and talking. Like some people's whys are about, the business that they want to build in 5 years, and they need to repair their credit today so that they can, be set up to do that. So I would encourage you to try to find a daily trigger and just know that like everything, the internet, TV, books, people, everybody is competing for your time. They are competing for your thoughts. They are competing for the way that you're going to do life. So to counter that, you have to build something for yourself. You have to build in a way to communicate to yourself about what it is that you're trying to do, because every day you are being sold to. Every single day somebody is telling you that your life will be improved if you get this product, if you drink this drink, if you XYZ, and you just have to find a way to counter that. And I do the payment at the top of my day, so that at the top of my day I'm already in the mindset that today is the day that I'm going to focus on paying off my student loans. So when I go to Target, I'm like, hey Target, I'm not even going to go in there.
And Target is dangerous, so that's a great trigger.
And then I had to, oh, that's the other thing that I did. I had to unsubscribe from like so many things in my email because like everything is like throw a dinner party, and I'm like, yes, no, no, I'm not, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, I had to unsubscribe from all that. Like I love like home decor and design and stuff, and I had to unsubscribe because like every other week I wanted to buy a throw pillow, and I'm like, you can't sign up to be marketed to right now. This is the
Right.
year where you don't let marketing information in.
Yeah. So we had some questions. Again, you're like hitting so many of them. This is great. One question was about, how do I pay off my student loans aggressively if I'm on a meager income? And, you pretty much answered it based on, how many side hustles and multi in. But for people who are already like, well, Stacey, I don't work for myself. I'm already maxed out. How can they incorporate some of this extra earning into their lives so that they can have more to put towards their student loans if they're already working 40, 50, whatever hours a week?
I think that's another opportunity to like exercise your choices. Like I have a friend who she was working a job where she was underemployed. And that's a real thing. And if you're underemployed, I want you to try to exercise your choices. So that means revamping your resume, reaching out to your network, and potentially getting a different job. And sometimes we'll say, oh, I can't do X, Y, and Z because I don't make enough money. Well, you're choosing to work at that job. And I know that that job probably suits your family schedule and suits maybe transportation issues. Obviously you're working there for some reason. Let's pretend like you're working there because you like it or because it suits some particular need. At that point, the question that you have to ask yourself is like, what's the end game? Like, I'm going hard for a year. I'm not gonna do this, for 5 years because that's too much. But where can you exercise a choice in terms of being aggressive? Where can you exercise a choice to get an uptick in your income? Like if that means you have to get a different job, you get a different job. I have a friend who works in the nonprofit sector, and she's like an amazing, if she went into sales, like she would be like freaking a millionaire. But she has no interest in it, but she has talent for it. So if she came to me and was like, Stacey, I really want to aggressively do this, I would say, talk to your husband and make a 2-year plan for you to go into sales and marketing at this particular company, go do it for 2 years, and then come back to the nonprofit sector. I would literally say be sacrificial in your decisions. Make big decisions that are going to have big payoffs for you later. You know, it's a big decision for me to say I'm going to live off of the money that I make waiting tables 2 days a week and take the money that I make on the stage and put that on my student loans. That's a sacrificial decision, and it's a choice inside of a choice. So I would encourage that person to possibly see if there's a way to become employed at your level of value.
Right. And I love your overarching theme that if you want to do all this, ultimately it's a sacrifice and there's choices that you have to make. I think especially as young people, it could be easy to be like, well, I want to pay off my student loans and I want to be in a fun job, and you want everything to be perfect. And so the thought that like I have to sacrifice somewhere, that's like very foreign, but it's not permanent. And there's a quote, I think, by Dave Ramsey, and he says something like, if you're willing to live like no one else, for a little while, then later you can live like no one else. So that's essentially what this is.
When I need a kick in the pants, I listen to Dave Ramsey. When I'm getting lazy, I listen, and I'm like, okay, you're right.
Yeah.
I'm very strategic about the information that I let in because I wanted to support this goal. Like I build in safeguards to me quitting on myself. I don't rely on my personal will. Like I seek accountability partners. I create a plan. I keep it in front of me. Like the reason why I have a tendency to meet all of my goals and the reason why I don't fail as often as other people is because I build in safeguards all around me.
Right. And you have a professional coach too, right? Yep. So I think that's a good option for people to kind of think of. So definitely want to wrap it up. This is just so good. We could talk all night. I'm so sorry, everyone. It's already 8 o'clock, and I know we didn't get to all the questions. But Stacey, if you don't mind, can we commit to those that we didn't answer? Maybe you and I can answer, and then just send those to the people who answer those or who ask those questions directly. Because because I really do appreciate that everyone who asked a question. So, you know, if your question wasn't answered, then we'll via email. But the last question that, let's see, we'll ask, you answered so many. You kind of touched on impulse spending by, you know, just having a plan, and I guess all the questions that said things to the effect of, how do you balance time? How do you still make time for yourself? How do you do all this aggressive paying and all these side hustles and, you know, still have time for you? So for those who are feeling like, I'm already like, my mind is totally stressed out, I can't add anymore, not because I'm not willing to, I'm not willing to sacrifice, but because I just like, mentally, I just need the time for myself. How can they build that into their lives?
I guess my secret key, if you will, is priority.
Mm-hmm.
So everything is done in priority. So first and foremost, my spiritual health is my number one priority. So while I do have a side hustle and I speak and I have kids and I have this, every Wednesday and Sunday I'm at church, and that is it. That is all that I do, you know. So I I have my life in set up in priority. So my first priority is my spiritual health. Then following my spiritual health is like my physical, or excuse me, my mental, and then my physical health. So I kind of balance my time based on that. So I have a pretty good idea of what I can handle physically and a pretty good idea of what I can handle mentally. So based on what I know my benchmark is, I will push myself right up to that limit, and then I'll pause and I'll take care of me. So like last week I was in a conference for 4 days, 5 days. I was in a conference for 5 days, but it was an intense conference where they're teaching us how to go about the world and like change and shape nations. So it's like major information like coming into my mind, body, and spirit, and it's very, very intense. When the conference was done, literally after the conference, I took 2 days and didn't do anything. I couldn't open an email. I couldn't, like, I didn't answer. I turned my phone off. Like, I didn't do anything, period. Because I knew even though physically I was fine and spiritually I was full, mentally I was too taxed to take on anything. So I
Mm-hmm.
think the first thing is to figure out what your benchmarks is. Excuse me, figure out what your benchmarks are, and then once you know what your benchmarks are, create a priority. Everybody knows my priority is spiritual, mental, physical. Then after that, everybody knows what I'm doing. Everybody in my life knows that I'm paying off my student loans. So that it's like, because everybody knows I'm paying off my student loans, there's a little bit more support. So like when my guy sees that I'm kind of running on E, you know, he'll get a little bit more kinder and a little bit like, hey babe, let's go out to eat, you know, my treat. I know you don't want to because we're focused on this, but you know, I just want to have some fun. Or like my sisters will just like bring food over so I don't have to cook. Or you know, my mom will take the kids. But it's because everyone knows that the priority for this year is paying off my student loans. You know, when I transitioned from my consulting company to opening up my speaking business, everybody knew that the priority was I was closing one business and starting another one, which translates into I don't have time to be playing games with you. I don't have time for you to be calling me and you know, like, you know, everybody was like, oh, Stacey's opening up another company. And like that was the language around it. And so I would just encourage you to communicate with people, get clear on what you're doing, and then communicate it to everybody. And then once it's communicated to everybody, it will establish a priority, and then just go with the priority. Like if your priorities are out of whack, it kind of just sets you up to not be able to have balance mentally, physically, spiritually, financially, and then people don't know how to support you, you know. People are like, are you finishing up school, are you doing that passion project, are you focusing on getting married? Like if they if people don't around you don't know what you're focused on, they have no idea how to support you. If they feel like you're in the state where you're trying to live your life like it's golden, they're going to invite you out every Friday and Saturday, and then you're going to feel bad that you have to say no. You know, my friends don't invite me out as often because they know what my priority is. So I feel like that's how you kind of like take back bits and pieces of your time that just get taken away from you having to accept or decline different things that if people knew the priority, they wouldn't even be something that was on the table.
That is so awesome. What a wonderful answer to the last question. So our time is pretty much up, but just to wrap up, I wanted to let people know who the winners were going to be. So I wrote so you know how I'm doing this. Everyone who left a question ahead of time, I wrote your name down here and then I assigned you a number. So I'm getting ready to go to random.org and just pull up that number. But Stacey, do you want to give them like a little kind of sneak preview or whatever? What are they going to get through their 3 sessions with you?
Well, we are going to do a deep dive in, because the sessions are going to be specifically focused on paying off your student loans. So we're going to do a deep dive. We're going to a website that has every single one of your student loans in one place, so you don't have to find it in other places. We'll go through all of that. We'll figure out your interest rates. If you're dealing with student loans and maybe credit card or consumer debt too, we'll kind of like prioritize that and put that in the order that it needs to be so that you can take care of it and pay for it. We'll go over an income matrix so that I can help you to kind of set up some of your income structures so that it'll be a little bit easier for you to make payments. And it doesn't have to be an aggressive plan. We can do the standard 10 or 15-year plan. I'll also do a little bit of coaching with you with respect to where you are in terms of your level of employment, because I understand how much income impacts your ability to be able to pay off your student loan. So we'll talk a little bit, a little coaching, a little mentoring around where you are in your career and what it is that you're doing. And then we'll kind of wrap it up with a plan for you to be able, I mean, whether it's a 1-year or 15-year plan for you to be able to go about taking care of your consumer and or student loan debt. So,
that is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
You're so great. I decided to match that by adding my passion of helping everyone kind of map out their goals. So this person who won will also get 3 sessions with me to go over what their goals are and then just really dive in and create a plan for how they can actually achieve it. So the winner is, and forgive me if I missay your name, it's not you, it's because I can't even read my own handwriting, which is bad. But it looks like I wrote down Sharitza Rivera. I'll go back on the page and make sure that that's it. But you are the winner. Okay. Congratulations. So stay tuned. I will send it through Google Plus because I think it automatically goes to your email, but be looking for that because I'll be sending you information on how you can take advantage of your prize. And I just want to thank everybody else for joining me on this Girls Night In. This is so good. Like, you know, I'm definitely going to rewatch it. So check back on thinkandgrowchick.com pretty soon.
Hello? Oh no, you froze. Can you hear me? Oh.
Wisdom. This was so inspiring.
You froze at the last minute. I didn't hear you.
Oh, I just said thank you for all your wisdom. You were so inspiring.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you for the opportunity. I mean, this is truly, truly a blessing. Like, you have no idea. Like, this is very exciting to kind of be doing this over different time zones and with so many different people. And you know, when I started it, I really just wanted to do this for me and my family, and I'm just very happy and excited that it's becoming a beacon of hope for other people and an opportunity for, you know, my generation to really free ourselves from one of the things that I think is preventing us from just sharing our God-given talents with the world. So I'm very excited for this opportunity, so thank you.
Oh yeah, so I can't wait to check back into you when you pay them all off. That'll be like an amazing.
I know.
So we're rooting for you. So everyone, until next time, thanks for checking us out. See you later. Bye.